previously we would say work hard, pull up your socks.
Yeah.
So that kind of comment is not...
it's not quantifiable.
yeah,
it's
you can't say
helpful,
pull up. When you say pull up your socks,
how?
What is that? What does it mean?
Okay, so now I wanted us to go into assessment on two fronts. One, exactly how is assessment done? And number two, how is this type of assessment beneficial to the child ultimately? Yeah.
Okay. So previously, before CBC, parents or teachers would grade the children favorably, so that the parents sees that school they're really doing something. Because if they are posting 90% or A's, the impression that is created is that the school, they are doing what they are supposed to do. But you see, those were just figures that could be, cooked just to impress the parent, so that the parent feels their fees has not been wasted. But CBC is not based on competition. So you are not looking at my child is the last in this class. We are looking what is my child able to achieve. If they were supposed to achieve a certain competency, at the end of the period, what we are assessing is the child able to demonstrate that competency. So if a child is struggling with a certain competency, there is no way they can struggle with all the competencies or skills that are being taught in school. Because you find if they are not good in math, they may be posting very good performance in physical activities or outdoor activities or art, music. So you cannot rely on one particular way of assessing the learner and saying that they are not good, because they might be struggling in one area, but they are good in another. And what they are good at is what will lead into their pathway in future. So unless the child has a special need, that means they are not able to keep up with what the so-called regular
in
students
every area. Yeah.
Then you need to have them assessed to find out whether they have any special case or special need, and that also involves some professionals, some officials from the government are involved, so that we know where to place the child. But finding a child that struggles with everything, and that they are not good in mathematics, they are not good in literacy, it will be very difficult unless the child has a special case.
Yeah.
Then you also asked about how is the assessment beneficial.
Yeah.
So you find the CBC is doing I would say systematic kind of assessment. Like after every substrand, you find the teacher does an assessment and records or reports. They are supposed to be progress reports, so that every substrand is reported. The performance of the learner in every substrand is reported, and immediately after that substrand is concluded, so that you find it's possible now to follow the learner as they progress. The challenge now comes when maybe the teacher waits until the end of term to start writing a report, and this was done the first weeks, nothing was recorded, so they'll be hurrying to do a report for the parents, and they might not do a clear reflection of what the learner was able to achieve. So these assessments are continuous, are ongoing, and report must be done as soon as they are supposed to, so that the parent can know in the first maybe 10 weeks of first term, what was my child able to achieve. So the parents need to know this was what my learner was assessed on, or my child was assessed on, and this is how they performed.
Yeah.
So, and because we are not doing a report book like we used to do before, but with CBC, if I was not able to count up to 10, you'll say this child struggled counting 1 to 10 or was inconsistent. Okay? And that is something that you show. Why are you saying my child performed below expectation? What is the reason behind that? So why did you say my child exceeded expectation? What was the reason behind that? And these comments or these narrations or these remarks are available in the design so that the teacher does not have to think, what do I tell the parent? They are well laid out, and if a child performs below expectation, there in a certain substrat, there's a narration, there's a criteria for saying this is why the learner performed below in this substrat or in this subtopic, if you like. So you are not imagining what the learner did.
Yeah.
It's something that you have observed.
Yeah.
The tools are available so
Yeah.
that you are checking against the rubrics that have been laid out.
Yeah.
So it's possible to give a true reflection of the performance of your child in the CBC without necessarily making general remarks, blanket remarks that the child is doing well.
Yeah.
So if parents go to school and want to find out how their learners are doing, the kind of conversation they should be holding is, we have covered this, and your learner was, in this one, your child was able to do this and this, and in this particular activity, the learner was able to achieve this. CBC is not ranking the learners. The ranking is over with. Because you find one learner may be good in, say, mathematics activities.
Exactly.
Another one is good in maybe outdoor activities or sports activities. So you are not in a situation where you are ranking them overall, because you remember later on in the levels, they are going to specialize. They are going to follow different pathways. So if you generally say the learner performed maybe below average, then what does that mean? It is below average on what? Is it in sports or in outdoor? Is it in mathematics?
Yeah.
So here we are more specific.
Yeah. So right now I wanted us to talk about access and about CBC. It's standardized to a degree, but is there wiggle room for a lot of these schools to implement it in a different way? The reason I'm tying this with access is we have schools in Nairobi, public schools, private schools, people with access to a lot of resources, and then we have the schools in the rural areas who might not really have as much access to what we have. So we have the curriculum, which is for everyone.
Yeah.
We have the learning outcomes that are expected for everyone. Now, for the activities, the actual activities that are laid out, is there room for the schools? Is it open to interpretation? That's what I mean.
An implementation of CBC is, I would say it's uniform across the country. But now, in terms of resources, you find that a different region may have availability of this resource. Another one may not have that kind of resource that may be required. But this is the very reason why teachers are being retrained, so that they are able to understand their region and the resources that are available in fact, in a teacher training program, there is a whole area they are learning about their county and their region, so that they are given a project or an assignment to identify resources available in their region and then make a report out of it, so that by the time they are going to teach the learners, they already know this is what we have in our region, so that when it comes to delivering their lessons or activities, they can customize their lessons with what they have, because you may not have resources that cut across the whole country. Some are available here, others on this other part, but the teacher is trained on how to use the resources that are available locally. So and that means that CBC in any part of Kenya should be able to run smoothly as long as the teacher is knowledgeable enough and has the skills and attitude to carry out the activities that are needed there.
Yeah, that's because I've seen a lot of people, and we were even discussing it here, for go and print this, photograph this, and even you mentioned there's a digital aspect to a lot of the learning. So it's interesting to note that can be modified for other areas. Now, it calls on teachers to be adaptable, to be creative, to be able to work with the students as they are and where they are. And I just feel like we have spent so much time getting here, not focusing on the creativity aspects of the professions that we go into. And I think creativity is huge. Yes, being a doctor is very much based on fact, but problem solving, which is what you do on a day-to-day diagnosing and whatnot, there is a major aspect of creativity involved with that. Similarly, now with teachers, to adapt and to be able to get the best out of their students in different ways is necessary. But until now, that is not an area we were focusing on. So how are we bridging that gap with teachers, especially the ones who've been teaching for many years, who've not had to necessarily be creative, and now you're suddenly planning different activities, figuring out what the best materials to use in your area are, you're presenting things to students in different ways. How are we bridging that gap so that this teacher is still able to deliver well?
You see, the teacher preparation is very important, and as a profession, any profession, one needs to keep on updating themselves. So if teachers are updating themselves, they shouldn't find any difficult moving from one thing or one method of teaching to another. If they are rigid, it means there is a problem somewhere, because things change. COVID came and we had to adapt to some ways of
virtual
things. So if we couldn't switch from one way that we are used to another one, then it means we have failed, or we are failing. So teachers should be in a position to adapt, and that's why they are constantly being trained, so that they adapt to the new changes within the curriculum. It's inevitable. Retraining is inevitable. So some of us were trained way before, but we have now to retrain again to handle the new changes.
Get up to date. And I guess creativity also takes a lot of practice, and
Absolutely,
this is what will be necessary. Okay, so we've talked a lot, and now probably the last question and the big one, because there's a shift right now to a lot of homeschooling. Especially during the pandemic, parents wanted to, I was one of those parents, to still be able to support their kids even when they're not going to school. It was a year and a half of not being in school, and they took up homeschooling. Some kids went back to school, and other parents, I know quite a few, who continued with homeschooling. And one of the questions we got is, okay, so now I'm homeschooling my child, it's going well, how do they do the exams, or how do they get the assessment for CBC? Is there an allocation for homeschooling within CBC?
Well, I've not found any formal program for homeschooling within CBC. And what the government has done is to make sure that there are schools within different areas. Government schools are available within reach, but you find because we are used to maybe the private having private schooling and so forth, so we must now start building confidence with the schools that we have within our locality, because you see, every learner needs to be tracked. The progress need to be tracked. That's why we have NEMIS and all that. We have national assessment coming every now and then. So that may not work in terms of homeschooling, because in terms of the activities they do, some activities they need to be done either as a group or in pairs, and also there are some core competencies that need to be achieved, like collaboration and so forth. So learners need to do some things in a group setup as opposed to at home. So we have to, probably what we should be looking at is what school will give my child what I'm looking for. I know pandemic pushed most of the parents to homeschooling, but we also need to appreciate that when the learners go to a school, and I think that is where we are going, because once CBC is fully implemented, we will not be looking for schools that are far from where we stay. We will find the quality education within our locality, like other countries do, so that we don't have to take our children far in a school that is far. You see, why we did that is because 844 was based on competition. So we looked at which school is performing better. So we take all our children there. But CBC is not about competition. It's about to delivering these competencies. So these competencies can be achieved within our locality, the schools around there. If it is private school, as a parent, find out how they are implementing their CBC. Find out if they are keen on implementation. Because CBC, unless maybe a parent is following another different curriculum, like maybe other international curriculum, which may have maybe room for homeschool. But CBC, they just need to...
The preference...
let them work with the schools and find out how the schools are implementing so that they can place their children in the right place. Because they need to... CBC is keeping record of these learners up all the way up to when they get to the upper grades. So even when a child transfers from one school to another, it's able to reflect in the system that this child moved from this school to this one, and this is the class teacher. So the class teacher is also held responsible for that particular learner. There is what we call accountability within the system. If they are homeschooling and probably the parent looks for a teacher, the teacher is not within the system. So if anything happens, you cannot hold someone responsible.
Wow. Okay. I think that's all the time we have for. I'm pretty sure we've not touched on everything there. I already have so many questions swirling in my head about university learning, about, the types of assessment and things like this. But this was an introduction to CBC. There is no way we can cover everything that CBC is about. But I'm really hoping that this has given you like a launching pad to go and do this research by yourself. You've already mentioned places that you can go to get the information. I think my main takeaway from this has been, first of all, on paper, I think CBC is a huge improvement from
even in practice.
As Kenyans, we are usually skeptical about implementation. It has nothing to do with the actual system. It's just we have been burnt before. But I think it's such a wonderful system and a big improvement. But we do have to work together, and we all just have to rally around this child. There are resources that you can access, so you need to do that legwork. I'm just really grateful that you're able to make time for this chat. Maybe you can give us any closing remarks.
I really appreciate this discussion, and we want CBC to work. Especially in all the schools that are in our neighborhood. We want it to work the way it should. So we have some courses that even parents can check on our website, itpd.ac.ke, especially the one on CBC. They can have the information they need to understand how CBC came about, how it is progressing, and what is the end result, and so forth. So, and let us keep on getting the right information. Sometimes the correct information may not be found within the political arena, but when you check the right places, you find the correct information that you need to know, so that as we make decisions about the system we want to place our children in, we have all the information we need. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, so that's it for this episode. There's going to be a lot more conversations happening around education because it's such a huge transition for a lot of parents and kids. So we'll be talking everything from the different curriculums. We'll address others in alternative learning and in traditional schooling as well. And we'll also talk about, delayed enrollment and whether there's any benefit to that, among very many other discussions. So please follow the Playroom. Let me know below if you've learned anything from this conversation and where you intend to go as the next step. Yeah, so until then, cheers and happy playing.